cord blood analysis associated with poor attention in early infancy and attention-related skills later on. There's another study that showed children living close to agricultural fields sprayed with pesticides had an increased incidence of autism that was directly related to the level of exposure. We talked about that genes exist. When the environment changes, we can adapt to that environmental change if we have a gene that helps us do that. All right? That gene does not develop as a result of this new chemical in the environment. We don't develop a new gene. If the gene is there, then that species or that individual in the species can get through this environmental change. This is a case in point. This peroxinase gene, this PON1, really in our healthy bodies has to do with the production of the lipid HDL. It has to do with cholesterol metabolism. It also happens to be able to break down peroxone, a byproduct of organophosphate pesticides. Just by happenstance. Nature didn't put it there just in case we started spraying pesticides. It was there. It was serving a different purpose. Well, what we are seeing is that kids who have a weaker variant, meaning it's less able to break down peroxone, have a higher incidence of autism in this country, not in Italy. In Italy, there was no relationship. Why? In Italy, they don't use these pesticides. No reason for the relationship. Didn't make any difference. Does that make sense? At our homes, we are putting incredible amounts of pesticides on our lawn. Statistically, 67 million pounds on the 30 million acres of lawns, over 2 pounds per acre in our own homes. The kids go out and play. They roll around. The cats and dogs roll around out there. We rub the cat and dog afterwards. We get it all over our face. The squirrels and chipmunks run around out there. The birds run around out there. I think we need to think about what we do. It may cost a little bit more to put down green stuff, but it's really very effective. And it's really, it's nice to do that. And, you know, when I started putting down green stuff on my lawn, I would actually go over to my neighbor and say, you know, I saw you were watching me. I just want you to know it's safe stuff. Your kids can come over and play on my lawn because I put down stuff that they don't have to worry about. You know? Say, oh, really? What was that? We had that conversation. You know, if we could kind of be a beacon for others just by an example. We don't have to get out there and march and protest. We could just let the word out little by little. We can go to the PTA meetings and make a little statement about, you know, what's the stuff you're spraying on the field? And if you know ahead of time, then you go look it up, go on the resource guide and find out what that pesticide does. Say, you know, do you really want to have the kids go out and roll around and play with this kind of a pesticide that's had the known problems? And by the way, these are some alternatives. I just brought it with me. You know, these are safe. They're not that much difference in cost. You know? And little by little, working from that level upwards will make a change in the world. I come from the 60s where we marched and protested, and maybe we made a little difference, but I think the real difference occurs from the ground level up. Inside our house, we're also using things like insecticidal sprays, bait boxes, pest strips, pesticidal pet sprays, bug bombs. I just can't imagine putting a bug bomb out there and spraying the house. Foggers, flea collars, pesticide shampoos. None of this stuff is necessary. There are safe alternatives that are very effective to take care of problems in our homes, on our pets. The other thing about active ingredients, a company that wants to sell something, a insecticide or a pesticide or herbicide, they, for a large extent, get to decide what is going to be labeled the active ingredient. So the active ingredient is supposed to be the thing that really works. The other stuff is just insignificant. About 99% of what's in that spray is considered inert. We don't care about that stuff. Those same inert ingredients in somebody else's sprays we call an active ingredient. Because it's inert, they don't need to tell you about it. They don't need to do safety tests on it. And the EPA is not even thinking about testing those things. It turns out, we just talked about spraying the fields and spraying our homes. In reality, when we look at the source of our pesticide exposure, it's primarily from our food. More than any other source, it's from our food. And so it's no surprise that kids who eat organic food have less pesticides in their urine. It's pretty straightforward. A group of kids was tested by putting them on an organic diet. Just switching to organic food, nothing else. And within 5 days, they stopped putting out pesticide in their urine. Right? So it's saying that, number one, the major source of their pesticide was in their diet. Just change the diet. Didn't change anything else. Just change the diet. The urine pesticide level stopped. It doesn't mean that after 5 days they were out of pesticides. They just peed it all out of them. It says that we were not putting new exposure in. Right? So the stuff that's there, it's fat soluble. It stays in there for 50, 90 years. It will come out by it. When we've been chelating the kids, whether we're giving them DMPS, DMSA, EDTA, it turns out that a lot of these chelators also will bind these organic solvents, these chemicals, these pesticides. So sometimes, moms tell me, my kid's getting so much better, but look, there's only a little bit of mercury or lead, whatever's coming out. Gets better. Every time we give him a chelation, he gets better. There's other things going on that we don't have a good way of measuring, but it may be that this is what's going on. Okay. Yeah, this is saying again that if we don't act now, that we're going to have permanent damage. Okay. All right, so non-organic food is grown with up to thousands of chemicals. These are all approved. Never tested, just approved. Over 10,000 are accepted as food additives. And only a few of them have ever been tested, but even if they were tested, they weren't tested in combination. I've made this point before. Let me just make something clear. When you take one chemical that causes a problem, let's say that it disrupts a muscle function, and then you have a second chemical that interferes with the chemical that detoxifies the first chemical, and a third chemical that interferes with an enzyme that is involved in the process that the first chemical interfered with, and a fourth and fifth and sixth. You're getting multiple hits. Right? So it's not that one chemical and another chemical become additive, but you cut off the only possible route to deal with that chemical, and then you aggravate the problem. And it's just, when we're talking about these 87,000 chemicals, I think there is no way to test it. You can't possibly set up a lab experiment that will test the interaction of all these different kinds of chemicals. So the only thing that we can do is just to begin to cut it out a little bit. Just become aware of where these things are and find alternatives. Just different ways of thinking about things. Not so convenient, maybe a little bit more work, Hey, I know, no one's got extra time around here. But just some more work, and we get a cleaner house. We get a cleaner kid. So, as much as possible, choose organic food. And choose food that's locally grown. The locally grown is to support your local farmers, to decrease the carbon imprint. We don't got to truck things across the country and across the big oceans to eat our food. You know, the chicken in California is shipped to China to be cut up and then shipped back to California to be sold. It's cheaper to cut it up over there. All right, so organic on the label has a specific meaning. It means that it was produced without synthetic pesticides or fertilizers, without sewage sludge, that's legal, without genetically engineering or radiation. I'm not going to talk about GMO. I'm not going to talk about genetically modified stuff, but I can tell you it is a huge issue. And it's something that you should be very, very concerned about. For example, they are developing, they sold us this bill of goods about genetically modified food because it's hardier, it'll last through the winter, and it's going to be trucked better. Garbage. What they have done is they have genetically introduced a gene that produces a pesticide. So now we don't have to spray the plant anymore. It's being made in the plant. They will take a gene that makes plants resistant to pesticides. I actually developed this outside of Monsanto in a sewage dump. They took plants that were growing outside of Monsanto, all of their chemical, horrible stuff. Some algae that was growing out there, they took a gene from that and spliced that into corn. So now that corn can grow in the face of huge amounts of Roundup. We can spray the bejesus out of it. Well, that makes it good for eating. The only way to get away from GMO is going organic. It's the only place where it is restricted. All right. And additionally, the animals cannot receive antibiotics or hormones. They've got to be fed organic foods with no animal byproducts. All right. Organic is expensive, isn't it? And I go to the I shop. I go to the grocery store, and I look at the groceries like this, and I say, you know, where is it going to be necessary to buy the organic peppers versus the other stuff? And you look at the prices. The prices have come down a lot now because we've been buying more organic food, right? So the prices are coming down more. There's more choices out there. Sometimes I sit there and I look at these choices, though, and this is what I do in my head. And it changes the whole question completely. You know, how much? All right, but still it's costly, right? There is this list, the Shopper's Guide to Pesticides, great report. This is a summary which lists the 12 best, the 12 worst, the 15 best. I carry this in my wallet, and when I'm standing in front of the grocery, I pick it out, and I look at it. I say, well, you know what? I'm not going to buy the peaches, but I'm okay with the onions. You know, I'll save money there. So this becomes a really nice, simple thing to do. And it